So I showed you anecdotally an example of a cold email that worked for me to get a prospective client to have a meeting. But now we're going to generalize this to all of your situations by using a guide from Harvard Business Review on cold emailing. And the first thing I want to point out is that these principles are basically assuming that you're sending personalized emails, cold emails. So you're kind of manually going in and writing them. I don't necessarily think that's the best approach. I think having a more broad-based automated email sequence makes sense, so you're not wasting a lot of time. So what you can do is you can modify these concepts for a more scalable automated campaign. So the first piece of advice here was tailor the message to the recipient. So people generally look at cold emails as spam, right? But if it looks as though it's special to them, that they're in a unique position to receive value from it, even if it's known that the email is going to a group of people, but it's going to a small group of people based on certain criteria, they're far more likely to pay attention to it. Now, the most basic way to tailor a message to the recipient is simply to put in their first name and their company name. But people know that is automated. They know that it's nothing, that's been handwritten or what have you. But other ways to customize is by calling out who they are. We have this special consultation on digital marketing for the CFOs of manufacturing companies, something like that. And then like, okay, this is for me, I'm going to pay attention. All right, now, number 2 here is validate yourself. So I did this extensively in the cold email I showed you. I mentioned my credentials, my specialty, I mentioned my past experience. So that's very important so that you're not just seen as some generic salesperson who's just hungry to get revenue. No, you're an expert in helping these types of people with this type of problem, for example. Okay, alleviate your audience's pain or give them something they want. So this is pretty straightforward, right? It's you're offering a benefit or you're solving a problem. And that could be your specialization. In fact, you solve specific problems for them. Or the benefit might just be that you help marketing for this narrow group of people. Okay, we only help naturopaths with their digital marketing. Maybe this is something you're interested in, and maybe they're in the market, or maybe they're not. Maybe they'll be interested in 3 months. You don't know until you collect some data here. Keep it short, easy, and actionable. So the cold email that I showed you was probably just a few sentences. Nothing that took a lot of time. I put that together in maybe 30 minutes or something. It wasn't something where I needed a lot of graphics, I needed to plan it, I needed a video. No, you don't even need a website to promote yourself as a digital marketing agency. All you need is like a handwritten email and a clear value proposition. Now, the thing with a value proposition, it comes from being a specialist. So the underlying thing behind all of this is that you're a specialist. And when you just blast out cold emails, so I used to get hundreds of cold emails from people trying to sell me SEO services. And it's like, hey, I'm an SEO consultant. I'm like, there's a million of you out there. But if they wrote me and they said, we're an SEO consultant for companies that run consultancies that do digital marketing for B2B SaaS companies, and that's all that we do, then it's like, okay, I'm going to pay attention. I'm not seeing you as spam. And that's one of the resistances people have to cold email, is that they don't want to, it seems icky, it seems like it's spammy, but it's like, if you have a clear value proposition, if you're a specialist, if you're only sending the email to a small group of people, you're keeping it short, easy, and actionable, it's not just an advertisement that you're sending to people. It's something they actually want. You're actually delivering value, and you're delivering value that's superior to anybody else because you're an expert, because you're a narrow specialist. And, okay, so the other thing is the actionable part. Often with cold emails, what you really want is just a reply. What a lot of digital marketers want to do is build these scalable campaigns where it's they click, they go to a landing page, they sign up, and there's a bunch of forms, and there's all these hoops you have to go through. But when you're trying to get sales, when you're trying to get client meetings, it's more just getting the conversation started. And the way you get the conversation started is by just getting them to reply. Okay, the last thing here is be appreciative and a little vulnerable. Okay, so the client's in control. They're in a position of power. They want to have agency. We know from business psychology and persuasion that people want to feel like they're in control. And what does that mean? That means you need to be a little bit submissive. Okay, don't be super aggressive. And that means using like smiley faces, being like, oh, I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time. I think this is especially true when you're sending cold emails to influencers. Influencers have a lot of power. They have a lot of clout. They have a large audience base that they can reach out to. So you need to take on a bit of a submissive role, perhaps saying that I'm really impressed with, your wide success. Maybe you could give me a few pointers. So sometimes the way I describe writing a cold email in some cases is almost like you're a university student and you're looking for advice. And that's particularly true when you're trying to talk to influencers or you're trying to get market research done. Now, when you're trying to actually sell your consulting services, you got to balance here, right? You don't want to be too submissive. You want to be very appreciative, but you also need to position yourself as the expert. But often people over-index on being too serious and being too authoritative, and that's not something that you want to communicate when the client is supposed to be in the position of power, is supposed to be the decision maker. Now, they've added a little bonus point here, which is like, don't use a template. I take that with a grain of salt. I think you somewhat have to use a template if you're going after a large market. If you're going after CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, then yeah, you probably don't need to use a template at all, and it's going to be a turnoff.